Thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you for having me here today. It's such a privilege to stand with you on this pro-life platform that you have, so thank you so much. I'm hoping I get this the right way around. Is it that way? Yay, there we go. So CBR UK is a human rights organisation, and it is our mission to make abortion unthinkable. And we do this through several different project arms. We go out into the street and we educate the public on the humanity of the unborn, and we speak at events like this. We have Brephos over there on my right, which is our church outreach programme. Brephos exists to equip the church to engage graciously on this issue and speak the truth in love. We have progressive education. We have a raft of resources for school children of all ages, but we can particularly speak into GCSE-RS and A-level philosophy and ethics, as abortion is on the curriculum. We have PACE, Post-Abortion Support for Everyone. This is our recovery course. It's a 6-week course. It's based on Mark's Gospel. And Pauline and her team are post-abortive themselves in the most part, and we'd be delighted to help anybody who's been negatively impacted by abortion. We have Hope Pregnancy. This is our pregnancy support arm. So any woman in the UK can contact us via our website at any time if they would like that life-affirming support and they find themselves in a crisis pregnancy. Now, I know that Christian Hacking was here last year and spoke on the pro-life heritage of our country and also the history of social reform. And if you weren't here last year and you didn't see that presentation, you can find it online, and I would highly recommend it. But I didn't want to repeat what was said last year for those of you who were here. So today's talk is going to be a bit more apologetics-based, and it's called, What Do You Think About Abortion? Understanding and Responding to the Abortion Debate. The title of this talk is very deliberately a question, because we find in the pro-life movement that one of the most effective things we can do is ask a lot of questions. And that's because this issue is so shrouded in misunderstanding, misinformation, propaganda, and wrong assumptions. And we all know ironically, asking this question of the people in this room, we all know what it's like when someone makes a wrong assumption about us, about what we believe, why we believe it, something we've done, why we've done it. Everything that they then build on top of that is going to be flawed as well, isn't it? So this is about breaking down some barriers and cutting through some wrong assumptions. What will I be covering? The 3 main worldviews on abortion. There are only 3. 1 is pro-life and 2 are pro-choice. I'm going to unpack them for you today using science and philosophy. After that, we're going to go through some of the hidden statistics, some of the things the media most definitely doesn't tell you about this issue. And I'm going to finish with how we graciously engage. By the way, there are some leaflets out in the foyer for all of our project arms under the CBR heading. Please do pick them up on your way out. Now, just before we start with our first viewpoint, which is the pro-life view, there's one wrong assumption I have to get out the way right at the beginning, and it's this. This is not about judging or condemning anyone who's had an abortion or anyone who holds a pro-choice worldview. Please know that today when I'm talking about the worldviews, I am just discussing ideology and we're not judging individuals. And can I grab a glass of water? That's better. So, I'm going to get started with the case for life. This is why I'm here, and the case for life can be summed up really simply using a little 3-line argument, our little syllogism. And it's this: it's wrong to intentionally kill an innocent human being. Abortion intentionally kills an innocent human being. Therefore, abortion is wrong. Now, that might seem really simplistic, and I know that this is a nuanced issue. There's lots of ifs and buts and maybes. There's lots of, well, I'm pro-life, but I'm not sure about these circumstances over here, or I'm pro-choice, but maybe only in these situations. But what we're trying to understand here are the core assumptions, the core reasoning for these viewpoints. And the foundational belief, the pillar on which it stands of the pro-life view is this. This is why I'm here today. I believe abortion is wrong because it takes the life of an innocent human being. Now, I said there were 2 pro-choice viewpoints. The first one, we'll call them pro-choice 1 because I'm not very imaginative. These guys will look at our little syllogism here, and they'll look at our first premise, that it's wrong to intentionally kill an innocent human being. And here they'll say, yeah, it is. So far, we agree with you, no problem. Where we come unstuck, unsurprisingly, is at our second premise, that abortion intentionally kills an innocent human being. And here they'll say, no it doesn't, because what is in the womb is not a human being yet. Now they might use different language, they might box this up differently, they might say it's a fetus, not a baby, it's an embryo, it's a clump of cells, it's a part of the mother's body, it's not a life, it's a potential life. But however this is couched, whatever language they use, at the core, foundationally, this is what they mean. Abortion is not wrong, because it's not killing, because there is nothing there to kill yet. Our second pro-choice view, and there are fewer of these people, this is the more minority viewpoint, these guys, pro-choice too, they'll look at that second premise that our first group of pro-choicers would disagree with, that abortion intentionally kills an innocent human being, and here they'll say, yeah, it does. It's a baby, it's a person, it's a morally valuable human being. We give you that. Where they disagree with us is at our first premise, that it's wrong to intentionally kill an innocent human being. And here they'll say, not always. Not always. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the dependency argument. So unlike our first group, who only recognize one morally valuable individual when a woman is pregnant, the mother, this group recognizes that there's two, mother and child. But because the child is dependent on its mother for life, she has the right, because of her body and her bodily autonomy, to not allow that child to use her body to sustain its life. And therefore, she has the right to kill that child, even though they would concede in this worldview that it is a child. And I know that there will be lots of abortion arguments whirring around your head right now, but I promise you, at a foundational level, at a core level, 99.9% of the arguments for abortion will boil down to one of these two positions. So what do we do? How do we understand this? The title of this presentation, as I mentioned, is very deliberately a question. The best friend of the pro-lifer is ask a lot of questions, and we've got a really big one to ask here first, and it's this. What are the unborn? What are they? Because you see, if we are wrong in the pro-life movement and the unborn are not innocent living human beings, then our case for life here collapses completely. An abortion should be a free-for-all through all 9 months of pregnancy for any and every reason, and should be no more arduous than having a tooth pulled. Why would it be? We're not killing anyone. But if we are right, and the unborn are living human beings, then our majority pro-choice viewpoint, pro-choice 1, that collapses, because it's entirely predicated on the fact that they are not human beings yet. So, how do we answer this question? We're always told follow the science, which I have learned today is more dubious than I thought it was. But we will follow the science in this. Human development begins at fertilization. This marked the beginning of each of us as a unique individual. A zygote is the beginning of a new human being. That's from Keith Elmore's Clinically Orientated Embryology, The Developing Human. It is scientifically correct to say that an individual human life begins at conception. Every time a sperm cell and ovum unite, a new being is created which is alive and which will continue to live until its death is brought about by some specific condition. Professor Micheline Matthews-Roth from Harvard University Medical School. By all the criteria of modern molecular biology, life is present from the moment of conception. Dr. Watson A. Bowes, University of Colorado Medical School. The idea that science has not answered this question, or that this is somehow up for debate, is a myth. It's one of those false assumptions that I mentioned at the beginning. It has. Life begins at fertilization. Science has answered this question. And if you think about it, we know that when we're discussing a baby in the womb, when we're talking about anything other than the thorny subject of abortion. Have you ever heard a woman say that her fetus is kicking her, or attended a fetus shower? No, we say baby. This is a photograph of an embryo alive in the womb at 8 weeks following fertilization. So this is an 8-week-old baby. It is a 10-week gestational pregnancy. This is not a mock-up. It's not a digital rendering. It's a photograph. This child's heart has been beating for about 3 weeks now. This baby has had brain waves from about 1 to 2 weeks now. The process called organogenesis is complete. All this child's major organs are present and beginning to function. There are lymphocytes in the liver. Did you know that by this age, by 8 weeks old in the womb, scientists have determined that 75% of embryos are right-hand dominant? That means they have hands, and they are able to use them to the extent that scientists can determine which one is dominant. That's a very advanced clump of cells. In a week or two after this point, this baby will have fingerprints and eyelashes. By 10 weeks, a baby can yawn and hiccup. By 12 weeks, they can smile. And again, we don't have any issue understanding this when we're talking about other species. We can look at these photographs and see an unborn elephant, a little puppy, my personal favorite, the baby dolphin, very cute. But when we look at our own species, we see a clump of cells. That, by the way, is a 12-week-old fetus. You notice I changed language between embryo and fetus. These are just things that tell us how old this child is, not what it is. Just like newborn and toddler and preschooler and adult. And these children look and act exactly as children of that age are supposed to look and act. Just like newborns and toddlers and preschoolers and, well, we won't class adults as children. Now at this point, our pro-choice one person, who say abortion's not wrong because it's not killing, because there's nothing there to kill, these guys are going to say something like, okay, you got me on a technicality. Technically it's human, and technically it's alive. Can't really argue with that. But it's not a human being that matters yet. It's not a human being with any moral value yet. It's not a person yet. Well, we're leaving science now, and we're into philosophy, so what do? We ask another question. What makes a person a person? What makes a person a person? What is it that gives us this thing called personhood, which seems to differ from human life, that endows us with human rights? And if you ask a group of people who hold a pro-choice worldview, you will get lots of different answers. You might get birth, viability, pain capability, brain function, the ability to move, a heartbeat, not being dependent on someone else, being rational, conscious, and self-aware, and many more. But ladies and gentlemen, the one thing that all of these have in common is that they are subjective. They are just a matter of someone else's opinion. There is no scientific research or justification behind any of them. Even viability, which is a very popular one these days, viability is simply a measure of the effectiveness of our technology, nothing more. A baby is viable in this country legally from about 24 weeks. In reality, it's about 22 now. But that's because we have very advanced neonatal care. If I was pregnant in this country with a little boy at, say, 24 weeks and 2 days, I'm past the point of legal viability and I can no longer kill him, unless he's disabled, and then I can kill him up until birth. But we'll set the disability discrimination aside. However, if I go on holiday to rural Bangladesh, viability there is closer to 34 weeks than it is to 24, because they do not have the medical technology in the middle of rural Bangladesh to keep a newborn baby alive at that age. Does my child cease to become a person when I get on the plane? Surely, whatever it is that makes us a person, it has to be the same for everyone. So even if we concede that personhood is somehow different from human life, wouldn't we have to pick one of these things and everybody absolutely agree that that is what it is and that is what it is for everyone? But the pro-life lobby does not agree. And the only thing we can conclude from looking at this list is that they don't know for certain when personhood begins. But the idea that that's an argument for abortion is false. It's not. It's an argument against abortion. Imagine you're driving home one night and you see this in the middle of the road. It's dusk, it's raining, it's autumn, and you're pretty sure that's just an old blue coat with some autumn leaves smooshed up in it. But you're not 100% sure. That could be somebody with brown hair who's fallen down in the middle of the road. Can we run it over? No. Why? Because we can't take an action that might kill a person if we're not sure. The only objective line in the sand we have that will ensure we don't kill anyone is the one that science has given us, and that's fertilization. Now, our pro-choice 2 person comes into play here because they know all this. They've been on this journey. And they'll say, yeah, we know it's a person, we knew that already. But even if it is a person, I can kill it anyway because it's dependent on me. Has anybody ever heard of the violinist analogy? Good, you won't know if I get it wrong. So, this is the scenario that has been put forward as the gold standard for this viewpoint. It's decades old now. It was put forward by Judith Jarvis Thompson in her book, A Defense of Abortion. She's American. But it's still held up today as the gold standard. So briefly, the scenario is this. You go to bed one night and everything's perfectly normal. You wake up the next morning in a strange room, lying in a hospital bed, to find yourself next to this unconscious man holding a violin, and you're hooked up to him via an IV. By the way, if there's any medics in the room, I do apologize for the total absurdity of the analogy. It's not mine. So anyway, doctor comes rushing over to you, and she says, I'm so sorry. This man is a world-famous violinist, and he's dying. He's the next big thing, and violinism, and he's got a terrible kidney affliction. And his fans discovered, somehow, that you were the only blood match for him in the entire world. And they broke into your house last night, and they chloroformed you and kidnapped you, and they brought you to me so that I could hook you up to him, and your kidneys could clean and filter his blood as well as your own. Good news. In 9 months, this mysterious kidney affliction is miraculously going to heal itself, and you can both go on your merry way. The abortion analogy obviously being that although it might be a nice thing for you to do to allow this violinist to use your body for the next 9 months to save his life, you are under no legal or moral obligation to do so. You can unplug that IV at any point. I love analogies, but we have to make sure that our parallels hold, and they don't here. We're not comparing apples with apples. Let me explain why. What's the natural condition of the violinist before we intervene to kill him? Sorry, no, we're not killing him, we're saving his life. Got mixed up. What's the natural condition of the violinist? He's dying of natural causes unless we act to save his life by hooking him up to you. What's the natural condition of a baby in the womb before we intervene to kill it via abortion? It's alive and it's exactly where it's supposed to be. What's the natural function of your kidneys? What's their purpose? They're to clean and filter your blood, not the blood of a strange adult. What's the natural function of a woman's uterus? What's the one and only purpose of the organ in the body? To grow and nurture her offspring. Lastly, just before I move on, do we have the same legal and moral responsibility to strange adults that we have to our own dependent children? Imagine this is you in the bed next to the violinist. Replace the violinist with your own 2-year-old daughter or granddaughter. Can you still unplug the IV? How would society judge you if you did? Dependency does not negate humanity. And in any other circumstance in the human spectrum, we know that. We don't make the argument. We don't make the argument with born children. We don't make the argument with car crash victims who are in a coma for a limited period of time. And yet we make it here. Just briefly, some of the numbers that you won't hear in the mainstream media. We abort 73 million babies per year worldwide. That's about 1.4 million a week, and that figure is endorsed by the World Health Organization. It is by far the biggest killer of innocent human life in the history of humanity. We have aborted more than 2 billion babies since abortion became legal across the world in the last 60 and 70 years. And it's legal, and in many countries, including our own, celebrated. Roughly 97% are elective. They are performed on healthy mothers and healthy babies, and 99% are funded by the taxpayer in this country. The last full year we have figures for, which was 2021, we killed nearly 230,000 babies in this country. That's just over 800 every working day. 10 million more, well, more than 10 million now since the Abortion Act was passed in 1967. More than 40% of abortions in the UK are repeat abortions, meaning that the mother has had at least one before. Last year it was 43%. The USA, historically, aborts just under 1 million babies each year, although this is falling since the overturn of Roe v. Wade, praise the Lord. About 65,000 babies saved in the first year. Estimates are that will go up to 200,000 saved if all the laws that are currently in the court get through. It's legal in the UK and in the US in many states to abort up to birth for any reason, and this is true in New York, it's true in California, it's true in Illinois, and it's still true post the overturning of Roe. Canada is one of 7 nations in the world with no restrictions on abortion whatsoever. You can walk into an abortion clinic in Canada on your due date in labour, and it's still legal to abort that baby. I'm not saying it happens often, I would hope it doesn't, but it's not illegal. China has aborted more than 350 million babies in the last 40 years, and many of them late term and forced. Many more girls are aborted than boys. It is one of the most sexist and misogynistic things we take part in as a society, just not for the reasons we're always told it is. India is missing between 23 and 26 million women and girls today because of sex-selective abortion. It's legal in the UK to abort a baby up to 24 weeks gestation or until birth in the case of fetal abnormality. This can be as simple as a cleft palate, clubfoot, or Down syndrome. Some statistics that are not up there just before I move on to talk about how we graciously engage on this issue better. Abortion harms women as well. Did you know that abortion is linked to breast cancer? It's linked to several different types of cancer, actually, but we have the most data for breast cancer. There have been 76 studies done so far examining the link between abortion and breast cancer. 61 of them have showed a positive correlation. 46 of those are statistically significant. It's due to the way estrogen changes through pregnancy and what happens when that's abruptly cut off, particularly in the first trimester when most abortions take place. I think a meta-analysis of data in 14 provinces in China in 2013 showed that after one abortion, your risk for breast cancer goes up by 44%, 2 abortions 76%, and 3 abortions 89%. We are constantly told that there's no negative psychological impacts for women on abortion, and yet the data absolutely refutes this. The largest synthesis of data ever published in the British Journal of Psychiatry in 2008, hardly a pro-life fringe publication. This covered 800,000 women, 22 studies, and over a 20-year span, and it concluded, and I quote, "A woman who has undergone an induced abortion has an 81% increased risk for mental health problems." That same study indicated a 156% increased risk for suicide. There are 49 statistically significant studies linking abortion to future preterm birth and low birth weight in subsequent pregnancies. And we know that preterm birth and low birth weight are key factors in infant mortality, learning disabilities, and physical disabilities as well. Between 1 in 3 and 1 in 4 women will have an abortion during her reproductive life. Abortion harms women. So how do we graciously engage? I have found in 6 years of doing this that most people who want to argue with me on this issue are doing so because they care about women. Some people just want to hit me over the head because they think I'm bigoted and evil, but most people care about women. So do I. I just don't happen to believe that abortion is the best choice. In fact, a lot of women will say it's the only choice they had. How is it a choice if it's the only option they've got and it causes so much harm? I want to help women too. I just happen to believe we've got 2 people in an unwanted pregnancy or a crisis pregnancy situation that we have to love and protect, not just one. I mentioned that 97% of abortions are elective. That means they're performed on healthy, consenting mothers and healthy babies. We get hit with the 3% a lot, and I'm sure you do too. So we get hit with rape, incest to save the life of the mother, and serious or fatal fetal disability. So to save the life of the mother, and I know you know this, no-brainer. I don't know any pro-lifer anywhere who would say you let both mother and child die in a genuinely life-threatening situation. You save the life you can save. But let's imagine our mother from rape for a moment. What common ground can we find? What can we both agree on? Surely we can all agree that this woman has been through a horrific assault, that she deserves our love, care, compassion, and as much practical support as we can provide her, not our condemnation. Surely we can also agree there should be far harsher penalties for rapists. But if what we've learned today is true, and the unborn are living human beings with moral value, then how can we kill one person to potentially alleviate the suffering of another? Imagine our mother from rape courageously not only decides to give birth to that baby, but parent that child. And when that child is 3 months old, she very understandably changes her mind and she can't cope. Maybe she's having flashbacks, maybe the child looks too much like its father. Can she smother that child with a pillow? Can she stab it through the heart with a kitchen knife? No. Why? Because it's a baby. It was the same baby 6 months earlier. It was just younger. I got into this because of one of these hard cases. 7 years ago, one of my best friends got an incompatible with life diagnosis for her son at the 20-week scan. And the second that the medics thought she would go down the route of abortion, why wouldn't she? He went from being a baby to being a fetus. All the language around him changed in dehumanizing ways. And when they made it clear that they were going to allow this child to die naturally, if that was what was going to happen, he became a baby again. And each week, my friend went for a scan, desperately hoping that her son would still be alive. And each week, they were aborting babies of the same gestational age across the hall, some of whom with disabilities that they could live with quite easily. He did live. He lived to be born at term, which nobody thought he would, and he lived for 24 days. But they got to hold him and change his nappy. They have photographs with him. We had a funeral. He has a grave. His siblings visit his grave. His name was Zachary, and he was a person, and he mattered. In any situation you can think of where you are arguing for abortion and you're making this argument, replace that unborn baby with a born baby. Can we still kill it? We don't kill poor children because they're poor. We don't kill disabled children because they're disabled. We don't kill children whose fathers have committed horrific acts against their mothers. We do the best we can to love and support each individual involved as best as we can. I'm going to finish in a second, but just before I do, you can make the case for case for life in a minute or less. I know I've gone on a bit, so it won't sound like it, but you can say that I believe abortion takes the life of an innocent human being because the science of embryology tells me unequivocally that a new, genetically distinct, whole, biologically living human person comes into existence at the moment of fertilization. And that we have to treat all living human beings as persons lest we make a mistake and kill someone by aborting them at the wrong stage. Lastly, SLED. SLED is an acronym we use to describe the 4 differences that exist between you now and you as an embryo, and none of them justify me being able to kill you then, but not now. S, size. You are bigger now than you were when you were in your mother's womb, but size does not confer value. My 9-year-old is bigger than my 7-year-old. I assure you my 7-year-old is not less valuable. L, level of development. You are more developed now than you were when you were in your mother's womb. But a 2-year-old is more developed, both physically and cognitively, than a 3-month-old. We don't think the 3-month-old is less valuable. E, environment. You were in a different environment when you were in your mother's womb, but since when does where we are determine what we are? And our value is grounded in what we are. D, degree of dependency. We covered this with the violinist, but I'll say it again. Dependency does not negate humanity. Unborn children are people just as born children are people, and born children are still completely dependent on their parents for life. If, for whatever reason, someone cannot care for a child, they must make arrangements for someone else to do so. But until that someone else can come and take over that duty, they are not allowed to neglect or otherwise harm that child. We often say that when abortion is understood for what it really is, it protests itself. I'm just going to finish with a little video now. There's nothing graphic in this, but we sometimes go out into the streets and ask people the question I asked at the beginning of this presentation: what do you think about abortion? And this video doesn't show you the video we show them, but it does show you their reactions to it.
What do you think about abortion?
Each individual, it's up to them what they want to do.
I think everybody should be allowed the right.
I'm not really for it or against it.
Everyone has their right to kind of do what they feel is right in their own life.
So what I want to show now is a short 1-minute video of what an abortion procedure looks like at various stages from 10 to 24 weeks.
That baby is too big to be doing now.
Oh, allow it. No way.
God, sorry, I don't think I can do it. Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't look at it. Sorry.
So that's the video.
That was those babies were fully formed. It wasn't even like it was. They had hands.
I didn't know it was like that. That's a body. That's a full, not full grown, but it's fully developed.
That really shouldn't be right. That's technically, even though the baby may not be out, that's technically, I will relate that to murder.
I don't think they should be cutting up babies like that. No.
I'm a bit speechless, actually.
It is a person, and people don't realise that. A lot of people think, oh, it's just a bunch of cells and that. To a point, but you know, 3 months and on, you can really see the formation and everything. So, yeah.
Thank you very much for listening to me today. If you feel that you can give some feedback on the talk, it always helps me improve and helps us to know how we can do better. You can scan the QR code, or you can go to cbruk.org/presentation feedback. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Well done.